Former Ivory Coast President Laurent Gbagbo has been acquitted of all charges by the International Criminal Court in The Hague. He had been charged with crimes against humanity in connection with violence following a disputed election in 2010. Post-election violence left at least 3,000 dead. Gbagbo was captured in 2011 in a presidential palace bunker by UN and French-backed forces supporting his rival, Alassane Ouattara. He was the first former head of state to go on trial at the ICC. Well, for more on this story, we cross to our correspondent, Jack Parrock. He's standing by for us in Brussels. So, Jack, you've been tracking this story for quite some time. It took a bit longer than we had anticipated, but finally, all of those charges have been dropped against him. So, what does this mean?
Well, at the moment, it means that he still has to remain in detention while the prosecution is appealing. We expect a couple of hearings over the next couple of days, but the judges have acquitted him. Essentially, what the judges at the International Criminal Court have said is that the prosecution has been unable to prove that the speeches that the former Ivorian President Laurent Gbagbo and Charles Blé Goudé, who was also on trial, a co-defendant with the former Ivorian President, that the speeches that they were making weren't enough to prove that they had incited the violence that took place in the election, post-election period of 2010-2011.
So in terms of his future, what happens next? Do you think, I know his family had proceeded back to the Ivory Coast, do you think he's going to follow them there? And of course, when we talked to you months ago, there were question marks as to whether he would run for political office there again.
All of that we're yet to know. He enjoys a lot of support in the Ivory Coast and, in fact, around the world in the diasporas of the Ivorians. You see huge amounts of people turning out outside the International Criminal Court every time he appears. There's been celebrations there today, as we expected, if he were acquitted. So it's hard to tell what his political future will hold, but at the moment what he has to wait for is this appeal by the prosecution to see whether he can be fully released. At the moment the judges have ordered his provisional release, but to keep him in detention while that process goes on. We expect that, though, to happen over the next couple of days. The ICC will not want to hold him in detention for very long once he's been acquitted.
Right. No doubt you'll be tracking that for us. But just shifting your attention to Zimbabwe now, what's the EU saying about what's going on in that country at the moment?
Well, there has been some discussion about what's going on in Zimbabwe, and obviously the Zimbabwean President Emmerson Mnangagwa is currently in Russia, meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin. Obviously, all eyes are on what's happening there to ensure, and that the EU has been calling on calm in Zimbabwe, as obviously there's been some flare-ups and some concerns about what's happening there.
Right. Okay, Jack, we're going to leave it there. Thank you very much. Okay, just one last thing. I've just been asked by my director to ask you about Brexit. Of course, there's a lot to play for tonight in terms of that Brexit vote tonight. Which way do you think it will go? And how do you feel as a Britishman about the uncertainty that's currently facing the country?
Well, indeed, there is a vote going on in Westminster at the moment. It's expected that the deal that was agreed at the end of November between the United Kingdom and the European Union will be voted down in the Houses of Parliament. Who knows what can happen there? Who knows how it will result? Essentially, I think probably the best money to put on would be that Theresa May would come back to Brussels and ask for an extension to the negotiating period. And therefore that will run until July, and there'll be obviously some deals thrashed out, but it's expected that she'll have to face a no confidence vote in her government that will be put forward by the opposition Labour Party as well. A lot going on this evening. We'll be watching very closely from Brussels.
Indeed. All right, Jack, we'll catch up with you very soon, no doubt. That was Jack Parrock. He's our correspondent in the EU. More news coming up for you after a short break.